we also had an oven. We had, and we would cook bread, and mostly flatbread, but also pizza.
Yeah.
In this little oven that we built out of brick. And at that point, there was this big wedding ceremony. And this was a huge event at the ashram because the wedding was Shami Kapoor's son. Shami Kapoor and his son were famous actors in India. They were as famous as you could get. Shami Kapoor had been a very devout Babaji devotee for years, and when he got there, I saw him sing lullabies to Babaji like they were unbelievable. He was this big fat guy, 300 pounds, singing these lullabies to his guru.
Wow.
It was touching. You know, I mean, like only a really accomplished actor can do. And then, his hundreds, I would say 100 people that were from Mumbai, they were all famous, or they were all rich Indians, friends of Shami Kapoor's, and his like 30-year-old son came to have a wedding there. And so I helped build a huge fire pit for the fire ceremony for the wedding, which was like 10 feet wide and 6 feet deep. But there was a problem in that Shami Kapoor was famous. So all these young people came up in their own vehicles, in trucks, to get a glimpse of Shami Kapoor and his son, who were, to them, movie stars that they had seen in movies, and they just wanted to get a glimpse of them. They didn't care about the ashram, what it stood for, or what we were doing, or the wedding ceremony. All they wanted to do was mill around and get a glimpse of Shami Kapoor. And we were warned this was about to happen. Babaji told my crew that was helping me at that point at the restaurant to be aware. All they're going to want is, they're going to want mutton, which is goat meat, and coffee. They may want tea. And he laughed. He knew that. And so there was trouble in that. It's totally against the rule of any temple in India for anybody to bring a weapon, even a knife, into the temple. So some young guy brought a knife into the temple and was intoxicated in some way. And he whipped out his knife and was kind of showing it off. And and he somehow got in a fight with somebody, So, all this is going on. And then, he got beaten by some of the ashram caretakers as a reprimand for getting in a fight and bringing his knife in. And so this was a big scene, It was like, and I remember Turkentine explained the whole thing, why this man was beaten to the, in a loud voice to all the Western devotees that were wondering what's going on. And then, somebody basically asked a lot of these people to leave so that they could have their wedding ceremony. And some of them did leave, but some of them didn't want to leave. They were asked to leave, they didn't want to leave. They started throwing rocks at the temple. So that all of a sudden it's raining rocks toward me and all my friends right in the tea shop. And one of the workers at the ashram, who was a tailor, got hit in the head, Didn't not get knocked out or anything, but I had to patch his forehead. And then finally that all calmed down, and they asked him to leave again, and they did. They finally left. So it was a big scene, you know. It's like, and Babaji knew that something was going to happen. He warned us to be steadfast. He warned us that he had a whole crew of people with sticks that would block the entrance if people wanted to come in a mob-like scene. Because India, if you travel around India, there's mobs many times. Train stations, trying to buy tickets. There's always mobs here and there. And that's their mentality. So it was a big lesson to all of us that, you know, Ram Dass has a lot of stories about that weekend. And what was interesting is that most of the people that were unwanted finally left. It was about 6 in the evening by that time. They started the ceremony, and it was like night and day. All of a sudden, they started the fire ceremony. People were singing bhajans. It was very peaceful. It was like really devotional, and because it had been such a raucous event, and people had trouble getting through the mobs of people, when they finally started, people really got into this really peaceful space. And then after the hour of fire ceremony, then there was a feast, and that was the beginning of the wedding ceremony. I think the wedding ceremony happened really like early in the morning. They tied string around the right wrist of the man, the left wrist of the woman. Stay connected as bride and groom, and all kinds of little rituals that a lot of them I didn't even see. And Shastriji was the one that presided over that.
Okay.
So that's one story that was interesting. Another story that happened that weekend, I think it was the next day. Yeah, it was the following day. They had created this whole eating area for all the guests on the Gufa side, which was a raised plateau overlooking the river. And so you sat on this plateau. They put out blankets to sit on, and they served an evening meal there. And it was a beautiful view at the sunset. You could see the river winding down the canyons. And I came late to that because I was running the tea shop. And then I had to get dressed, I changed into ritual clothes. And I walked in alone. Everybody else was already there. And I had to pass by the gardens, which were vegetable gardens with lots of tall tomatoes and stuff. And all of a sudden, I saw Babaji in one of the rows of the garden. And I saw him, and he was like prancing from plant to plant and talking to the plants. He was saying, "Oh, you look so beautiful." Oh. And he was doing this kind of motion, up and down kind of thing.
Yeah, that's okay.
And I was like aghast, I just like stopped still and went, "This isn't the Babaji I usually know." I mean, Babaji's usually, very proud and directing people or, accepting gifts or,
He was playing in the garden.
He was playing with his plants. He was talking to them. And I didn't know what to think. And he just saw me and stood up, walked over to me, and said, "You go eat." Waving me on like you shouldn't be watching. And I started laughing. And he had a twinkle in his eye. He said, "You go eat." I could see the smile on his face. And I thought about that like for hours. What does this mean? And knowing that Babaji was very intuitive and he kept track of everything at the ashram. There was nothing that he knew everything that went on.
Mm-hmm.
And he was considered to be, a god.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that was just for me. It was like he was giving me a nonverbal permission to be playful,
mm-hmm.
To be like a child if I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been that way. I'd been a camp counselor. I'd been, as an adult, I'd been a musician. I'd been lots of things. And, so that's something I always remember.
Mm-hmm.
It was like permission to be playful. And that was one of those times when I knew he was doing something just for me. There was other things he did too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any questions or.
Well, why it keeps coming up to me is it's been 30 years, over 30 years,
yes.
And Baba, you still come to Crestone,
yes.
Babaji's ashram, and
I still have his photo on my altar.
Mm-hmm. So it was you had a huge connection with them, and what kept it going?
Well, I felt like I developed, as much as you can, I developed he treated me like a friend,
mm-hmm.
as well as one of his servants. Like one time, we were walking side by side down a big stairway to the tea house because his entourage was moving in that direction. And he put his hand on my forearm and just, gave me a light, friendly touch.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew at that point he loved me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He loved the work that I was doing for him. He told me to bring my family back to visit him. I would show him photos of my son, who was like 7 at that point, and my mother. He would say, bring them, to Haidakhan, and which I never did, which I could have. So the other thing he did, which was really masterful, and by the time I got to him, he had been in that role of guru probably for at least 10 years, and he was a master at creating intimacy in small groups. Mm-hmm. In other words, intimate communication. So in the afternoons, in our free times, people would come to him, they would joke with him, they would ask him questions, he would talk. There was 2 or 3 of his close friends that were always joking with him,
mm-hmm.
and he was joking with them. You would hear a lot of laughter. It was in Hindi, so a lot of it you didn't understand.
Yeah.
Unless you were there and you saw maybe something, you could kind of figure it out. And then he would just get up and move. Like if the group got too big, he would move to a different part of the garden, to be different, to the side of the temple. There were grounds that he could move to, and he would just pick a spot. Mm-hmm. And then some of the people would leave that were in that group, and it would be a smaller group, and he would start over again with an intimate conversation with somebody. So, and he would do that all day, every day. You know? I mean, not all day, but for many hours.
Yeah.
And so he was really a master at connecting people up. He would often connect devotees up as friends. He would tell them to get married and then laugh. Sometimes they would get married, sometimes they wouldn't. But the fact that he had told them to get married, they would usually become friends and talk about it. And sometimes they would get married just for the fun of it, and then go back to their respective countries and forget about it.
Yeah, I read in the Harmony book about that he the guy that wrote the book.
Yes,
that he told them that they were married. Yeah. Him and
then they did get married, and they stayed married for quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah, Radhasham. I forget his Sitaram is her name. So, he was a master of making people feel good about themselves. Which, oddly enough, my father was also. I mean, and the whole seva or karma yoga aspect of the ashram was, he was teaching people to create community, not think about yourself all the time, but learn how to give to other people in some way. And he often would tell us to go back to your countries and create communities. And basically, he was showing us a way to do that, and that's what's happened here in Crestone. We've created a family.
And you've been a part of Crestone?
I've been a part of Crestone since it began. Yeah, I met Ram Lodi. I was helping to build the Hawaiian ashram. After I came back from India, I contacted Hiraman, and he invited me to come to Hawaii to help build a Babaji ashram in Hawaii. And I moved there. We were basically camping out, building the temple. After we got the temple to a place where we could use it, although it didn't really have a floor, we started building a house, and then we got the house to a place where we got the roof on. We moved into the house, even though it was unfinished. And then we put the floor in. It was like that in stages. And the community built up around it. We built gardens and grasses. And it was an ongoing community for a decade. And so I was involved in that for about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And during that time, I met Ram Lodi, who was living in Maui. And then we both ended up somehow in Colorado. I don't know how Lodi ended up in Colorado, but I moved here to get married and, in Boulder. And then I heard that they were, I was in communication with Hiraman and Ram Lodi, and they were talking about, building an ashram, and so I sort of followed it and then helped out whenever I could, to come down and help build and donate money. So, and it was difficult building this place up 8,000 feet. Yeah.
A lot different than Hawaii. Yeah.
For 10 years, this where we're sitting right now is just an open garden. It was a square open garden, just a little pony wall. That building was there, and this temple was there. The temple was enough for about 12 people to be inside of, and it was cold in the winter. So it was a struggle, but as we gained more momentum, people started seeing how beautiful it was up here. We got the money to finish off this kirtan hall. And but we built the earthship before that. Once we built the earthship, then we were on our way. But it took a lot of years.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm a musician, and I never thought I would be a kirtan musician. You know, I was a blues harmonica player. But when I started doing kirtan, I just started drumming in Hawaii. So and then when I was in Colorado, I got into playing Middle Eastern drumming and African drumming, and then making drums. And so, but kirtan sort of grows on you. It's not something you understand why you like it so much. It just opens your heart, and so you do it.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't understand why. I'm in a kirtan band. She thinks it's crazy.
There's a group of people coming in right now, so we gotta stop it here.
Okay.